GB2 capital G here. Got some incredibly ridiculous Infernity duels for you guys to check out, showing you the power of what this deck can do in the first turn, which if people don't realize this, Infernity still has one of the highest ceilings in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's crazy that these cards are from the 5Ds era, but Infernity, believe it or not, have not been power creeped as an archetype. Their strongest cards like Archfiend, Barrier, and Launcher are still just as powerful as they have ever been, and with Barrier moving to 3, you now can stack up those negates one after another. This is actually brought to you by a buddy of mine, Atlas Rising. For those of you guys who don't know, he's a small Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Yu-Gi-Oh! Channel, and he's a very consistent and good Yu-Gi-Tuber. Produces awesome content like what you guys are about to see, so I implore you guys to check him out. His link will be in the description below. But Infernity, even with the loss of Firewall Dragon some time ago, which I used to play Infernity with Firewall Dragon, and the combos you could do were nuts. People know about like some of the FTKs you could do in Infernity. Even without Firewall Dragon, it really doesn't matter because you have Saryuja Skull Dread, and with the dangers, it seems a little weird, right? You're like, Cap, why would you want to use dangers in a deck that can't pop off if it has cards in the hand? The dangers are all dark, so they work with a Lure of Darkness. You get like infinite draw fodder. Even when the Infernity monsters go to the graveyard, you have so many freaking Monster Reborns in the game, even without Soul Charge, that it's just not a problem. So let's go ahead, shut up, and roll this duel. And you can see, even with no Infernity in your opening hand, it honestly doesn't matter. And the thing about it is, you know, Infernity have gone through so many different forms. I might even have to make a Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of story on Infernity and the different variations. When Infernity were first released, people played them as a synchro deck during 5Ds. Then they moved to an Exceed form with Exciton Knight and Lavalval Chain during Zexal. That's when they won Worlds. But now they're kind of playing back to the 5Ds type. You're seeing cards like Infernity Avenger. This is a tuner. It helps you go into level 8. Level 8 synchro monsters are extremely good again, guys. Not just the Void Ogre Dragon and the 100 Eyes Dragon of 5Ds, but you also have Borreload Savage Dragon, a huge negation card. And you're playing things like Infernity Mirage. Now, during Zexal, Infernity players did not use any of these cards, but now they're running them again. So you can just empty out your hand, bring back your Archfiend with your Necromancer, and also just other cards like DDR, which can get you back your Infernity Mirage, and you can just kind of continue popping off. This is an old school combo. Use 100 Eyes Dragon to copy things like Necromancer and Infernity like Mirage. And even if you get stuck with a card in your hand, you do have the option of using a DDR, and if you discard a Danger Monster, then you get to use the Danger Monster's effect as well. Things like World Legacy Succession are just nice little Monster Reborns, and sometimes it does look like at the beginning of this combo that you're not really doing things, but you do have to do a few, you know, you have to loop a couple of times just to get like your barriers, but then you start comboing out into your more powerful Synchro monsters like Borreload Savage Dragon, Void Ogre Dragon. And essentially, you will always be ending on 3 barriers. Now, this is something that Infernity used to do way back when, but, you know, obviously Infernity Barrier has been limited for many years now. But now they have the potential of doing these plays again. And, I mean, if you're a player who likes things like Guard Dragons, you like these kind of super high ceiling combo decks, this is probably the deck for you. Also, another kind of fun fact is the fact that Infernity, they can synchro for level 4 synchros, which actually gives them access to another negation in Herald of the Arc Light. So when you look at this final board, you see, what, 1, 2, 3 copies of Infernity Barrier. Then you've got Void Ogre Dragon, you have Herald of the Arc Light, and you have Borreload Savage Dragon. I mean, that is 6 negations in the first turn. Now, the thing is, there is a small opportunity, because if you're going first, obviously you don't get to attack. If your opponent activates any spells, traps, or monster effects, you just negate them. Your opponent's best option, honestly, I don't know why he didn't do that, but your opponent's best option is probably to attack in the Archfiend, and that's why some people will not go 3 Barrier. They'll actually go like 2 Barrier and a break just to stop the monster from attacking. But yeah, there is a small window here, which I guess you could kind of disrupt them. There's a small window during your opponent's draw phase where they will have a card in hand, the card that they draw, and that will actually turn off the Void Ogre Dragon and all your barriers because you do have a card. But that's why you make things like Borreload Savage Dragon, which also can just be a negation every single turn. And I mean, I just feel like it's legitimate. Like, these boards are strong, but honestly, whatever you draw, you just put it on the field. Like if it's a you don't run any high-level monsters or anything like that. If it's a speller trap, you just instantly set it. But your opponent is probably not going to know what to do when you have all of these damn big-ass monsters and you have all of these freaking negations. It's interesting. He's going to go for Levier, the Sea Dragon. This is all just like super icing on the cake. Obviously, he already has game on board, but he's like, Cap, we're going for the style points. We're going to make Boral Sword Dragon when opponent is at 900 life points. Atlas, you freaking savage. You know that was not necessary. And this is going to be pretty similar. Now, this is really skillful play, guys. His opponent is playing Sky Strikers, a meta deck. Now, I don't generally see like super high skill level Sky Striker players, but you know this guy is good because his opponent activated a danger monster and his first response was, Cap, I'm gonna ash that, despite the fact it's not a hard once per turn. So you know this Sky Striker player is good when he ashes a danger monster that's just going to activate again. So we're gonna have to put a cap on this entire duel. I don't know what his opponent, why would you, oh my God. I mean, I had that in my first duel with Dangers, showing the archetype. I mean, I thought that people kind of learned then never to Ash Blossom a danger monster because your opponent will just activate it again. Anyways, he has the Infernity monsters in the graveyard. He simply goes for the Mirage, which is summoned off of Saryuja. That's another thing. Saryuja allowed you to get those Infernity that you search or that you have stuck in your hand out of your hand at any given time, because you're always going to make Saryuja with like 4 monsters. So having that ability to special summon from your hand is just like way too good in this deck. So even though the deck did lose Firewall Dragon, like Saryuja at 3 is just the natural replacement. So you really don't even have to worry about that. And even, I believe in my old Infernity builds on like Duel Link book, I believe I used to run 1 Firewall Dragon and 3 Saryuja, because I was like, dude, Saryuja is like almost as good as Firewall Dragon in this deck. So even when you do lose the card, the Firewall Dragon, which allowed you to do the infinite summoning from your hand, I mean, it's still perfectly fine. Like, Saryuja is good enough to facilitate all of your plays. But yeah, generally, if you can only get 3 searches from your Archfiend, 3 trap searches, I would not recommend going for 3 barriers. It looks really spicy. However, there will be some decks that simply, you know, summon, attack, and then all your barriers get turned off. So you don't really have any ways of stopping their attack. But if you get the break, then you do theoretically have a way of stopping the attack, as long as the monster, you know, can be targeted or something like that. If your opponent's monster can't be targeted, then you might have a problem. But this is pretty much the same thing. This was a board with, I don't want to say 7 negations, but 7 disruptions. You had Herald of the Arclight, which is a negation, the Borload Savage Dragon, another negation, no cards in hand, so Void Ogre Dragon, that's 3. You've got 3 barriers, and then you also have the Infernity Break. So if your opponent wants to attack, then pretty much, you know, they're not going to be able to do that as well. Anything he activates at this point, it's pretty much just going to be negated. He has the Void Ogre Dragon and the Savage Dragon. I don't even think I would have allowed him to activate the field spell. I just would have barriered that shit. Like, anything that a Sky Striker player tries to activate, I'm just barrier, you know, Void Ogre Dragon, Borload Savage Dragon. And these guys, you know, they get their effects every single turn. So you can use these probably before you use your barriers. But then again, make sure your Archfiend is protected, because you wouldn't want your opponent simply attacking over that. So let's go ahead and check out what the deck list looks like on paper. So this is what the deck looks like on paper, and as I said before, the playstyle with Infernity, now that they have 3 barrier back, is pretty much the same way as it was during 5Ds. The monster lineup actually looks somewhat comparable to what Infernity used to initially run. I mean, obviously, you only have 1 copy of Archfiend, so, you know, you're going to be losing out with a little bit of power, but you're basically going back to a lot of the older school cards. Things like Infernity Mirage, Infernity Avenger, these were not ran during Zexal at all. The only Infernity that you ran then were Archfiend and Necromancer, but now these cards are really good because you're really trying to synchro for level 8. That was kind of the original game plan with Infernity, making things like 100 Eyes and Void Ogre Dragon, but now you have another amazing level 8 negation card in Borload Savage Dragon that gives you that disruption every single turn. Also, you know, there is no Beetle in here, which is kind of just another OG Infernity card. Beetle really can't be used because Beetle is a 3 or a 0. If I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, Beetle, you tribute it. If you have no cards in hand, you get to summon 2 more Beetles from your deck. But if you only have 1 Beetle, there's, you know, you can't resolve it, so there's no point. The danger monsters, obviously, are super good in this deck because it can just send any of these guys to the graveyard. This is the only Infernity monster that's really not kind of common. The Patriarch, this one gives you battle protection or card destruction protection for an Infernity monster from the graveyard by banishing itself. Essentially, it's Salamangreat Banelix, just protection from your graveyard. But even with the danger monsters, like you saw, if you discard Infernity monsters, you can simply bring them back. But you can also discard other good cards like Stygian Street Patrol, which is another good card that's always been solid in Infernoids. If you discard Archfiend Eris or Fiendish Toronto Warrior, those are ways of getting to your Archfiend instantly. You guys saw in the duel. Fiendish Toronto Warrior gets sent to the graveyard, it dumps the Eris, and then you can get in front of the Archfiend because it has the word Archfiend in its name. And even though there is no more Soul Charge, which used to be the ultimate power play for Infernoids during Zexal, I mean, it's perfectly fine because we have Monster Reborn back in the game, we have World Legacy Succession, and, you know, I feel like there are just enough ways of summoning monsters back from the graveyard. Infernity have always had Necromancer, they've always had Infernity Launchers, so you have enough good cards to kind of summon things back, and even beyond that, DDR is pretty good because you can banish something like a Mirage off a Lure of Darkness or off a 100-Eyes Dragon, and then you can DDR it back. And Infernity Mirage basically is Launcher, it's just built into a monster. So yeah, the ceiling of Infernity is still super high. I don't think Infernity as an archetype has been power creep. That's the reason why Konami is afraid to put this deck back at full strength. Konami knows that if they put, like, let's just say that they put Infernity, Archfiend, and Launcher back at 3, I have no doubt in my mind that Infernity would become like a 100% meta deck, because if it went first, you would basically just see it comboing off like this all the time. Like, it would be 5-6 negates every single time. That's really the ceiling. Or, I mean, maybe even, well, now that was with Brio. I was thinking that it could be able to pull off the Trishula 5 times turn 1, but that was only done with Brionica, and now Brionica has been errated, so I don't know if it'd be able to do that without Premature Burial. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the duels. Check out Atlas Rising for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh! Pros duels like this, and you know, subscribe if you guys have not already.